Alex Charmander was Gandalf, the Grey and the White. I was Pippin. Park of Australia was Mary, so Mary and Pippin. And then Alex Robson of England was Gandalf, and he was like the tallest of us, and Gandalf's a dwarf. And then Jinsul Kim was Boromir. And then Alison Shirar, okay, Jinsul Kim of Korea was Boromir. And then, Alison Shirar of the United States of America was Legolas. And Nate James Lindy of Scotland was Frodo. I freaking remember the king, Viggo Mortensen, the king, okay? Luke Fairchild, Pharaoh, the rock magnetism guy, he was the Return of the King guy, Viggo Mortensen. Aragorn. Yeah. Okay. And then there was another person that I came up with, so this is part of the digression. There was for the people who I shared offices with, we came up with names. It kind of fell off towards the end, but for the most part, I came up with names for nicknames, or nicknames for people based on their names. And one of the standouts was Shui Zhang, who was one of my comrades in the Militzer research group, where we worked on quantum mechanical first principles computer simulations. So quantum physics, quantum mechanics. He came up with the nickname Shui Z, like Shui Z. And he was a particularly standout fellow. He was like the fearless leader in his own way, because he and his wife got pregnant when he was in his PhD program, which is like, in academia, the standard pathway is to have a kid when one's a professor, once one has a professor position. If one's feeling very ambitious, they get pregnant or have a kid during a postdoc, but PhD is like really early on, and we were all like, whoa. And it was kind of a sad story, because his wife, so they got pregnant, and then his wife, we didn't really ask a lot of details, but had either miscarried or had a stillborn child. And so that was Shui, and we were both in the Burkhard Molitzer research group. And Burkhard Molitzer was born in 1970 or 71 in East Germany, and was part of the East Germany military, and was actually ordered to kill civilians as part of the Army for East Germany. And I did not know that when I joined the research group, but I thought it was kind of, I write about and publish about swimming these days, and this digression has a point. It's a long one, but it ended up to a new target at the end of the day on 1 January 2021. So it's kind of like what I was thinking through on the day. So today is a good example why I'm reflecting on this previous day. That would be in trying to understand what it's like to have a research advisor from East Germany who served in the East German military. Would be kind of like if one was a swimmer this year, 2022, March 2022 to kind of present. It'd be similar to if one was a swimmer and one's coach was part of the Russian military and was ordered to shoot on people from Ukraine. Okay, so that was my research advisor. We published, or at least I produced the first authored publication from his research group. He was a good advisor. He was a good advisor. And during one of his classes, he let me come in, and I got to give a brief segment in one of his classes on serpentinite and metasomatism, which are geological, like important geologically. And so I got to do a really short kind of, like not lecture, but like informational very teeny tiny lecture as part of one of his classes, just like one literal class. And so I was thinking on 1 January 2022, I reached that part of my mental digression and I was like, I could edit more on Wikipedia. I had been contributing. I started off contributing to mineral pages on Wikipedia kind of as a subject. I was like, I could write about serpentinite, Metazoicism, stuff like that. And I was like, but maybe not. Maybe I want to work on the people who work on stuff like that. I know a number of people. And so I kept kind of thinking, I was like, okay, what other professors at UC Berkeley when I was there did I interact with in like a teaching sense? So kind of like on a daily basis in a kind of different manner. And there was David Schuster, I was a TA for his introductory geology class, and I was in charge of a couple of lab sections for the class, and then like helped out other ways too, but like that's like the teaching component for the TAs for that class, teaching assistants. And so there was David Schuster, and then I was a teaching assistant and got to teach a few discussion sections for the Introduction to Oceans, so an introductory oceanography course with James Bishop. And then later I was the only TA for a class with Bruce Buffett on the history and evolution of planet Earth, so that was an upper division class. And I led the discussion sections on that. And then there was James Bishop again. I returned to the Introduction to Oceans in Oceanography course, and it was co-taught between him, James Bishop, and Bethany Edwards, who was a relatively new professor in the department and was hired when I was there. And I put in a good word about her during the hiring process, and I saw her job talk and stuff like that. And she was the one, so when I quit my teaching position, that was the teaching position I had when I quit in the fall of 2019. When I quit my job, that was my teaching job, and then I quit my degree program at UC Berkeley in October 2019. And she was the one, before I left, I handed over, as part of my teaching, I had authority over letters for students with disabilities, so I could accommodate the disabilities, and I could share them with another instructor in the course for like if I needed help or something. And so I entrusted that to Bethany Edwards and a grader for the course, Annie Leal. And so I was like, what about Wikipedia pages for these people? And I was like, well, Wikipedia has this notability needs to be established with references. And I was like, there are these professors who may or may not, and students that I interacted with, that I just named, I was like, who may or may not have the references needed for a Wikipedia page. And I was like, there's one, Elizabeth Niels Polo, who was, if I'm recalling correctly, 1 year ahead of us. So she started UC Berkeley 1 year ahead, if I am recalling correctly. And it was like, did I remember to include everybody's countries? I don't know. Okay, point being, she was covered in a student spotlight in Scientific American, which is a pretty big deal. And so I was like, I know there's at least one, and she did a radio interview and stuff, and we talked to her about, like, me and some other people, kind of when she did it, because she thought it was an interesting experience, and so we got to hear about the dynamic between her and the interviewers and stuff like that. So it's like, and that's completely missing from the like the behind the scenes, and it was a kind of podcast like format, but like a radio interview. And then there's a text that I've been able to find online after, but like to hear about the dynamic of the interview was a very interesting thing. And I was like, well, there's at least two, and she has publications, and she's a very interesting person, so why don't I start with her? So this very long mental digression that started with the Pokemon Game Boy games that I played in childhood ended with, on 1 January 2021, the decision that I want to make Elizabeth Niels Polo Wikipedia page this year. That is a year project. But if I'm going to make her, her Wikipedia page, I need or want to try and make a Wikipedia page for somebody else as well. And so I was like, what can I do? What is my life experience? What can I speak with at least semi-confidence about enough to make a Wikipedia page? And I was like, swimming. And so at that point, I kind of started re-gearing myself to, okay, I'll continue writing and photographing and videoing for Yelp, but not as much as I did in 2020. I was the most prolific, one of the 50 most prolific in North America and stuff that's assigned by Yelp and stuff. And so I was like, I'm not going to do that level again. I'm going to scale it back. And then I had already decided to work on more me on screen time for YouTube, which I did. And I also decided instead of these and instead of this, I'm going to focus on Wikipedia biography pages in 2021. And I did. So that is my reflection for 1 January 2021 during the COVID-19